What's going on, YouTube universe? This is NYG Jeff ET3285, and I'm back with another video. And today I'm just going to talk about the crazy scenarios that could happen in this upcoming draft. Now, we all know every single year with the NFL draft, some things that we expect to happen sometimes tend up not happening. Now, especially going into this draft this year, a lot of people are assuming that the Jacksonville Jaguars are just going to take Aiden Hutchinson. That Aiden Hutchinson seems like the most realistic guy right now after the Jaguars franchise tagged Cam Robinson, their left tackle, and it seems like that they're going to be taking that the offensive tackle position is off the board for them. So the most realistic scenario seems to be like they're going to go take Aiden Hutchinson number one because they want to have that impact defensive guy to pair along with Josh Allen at the defensive end position. But as a lot of reports have been coming out, Travon Walker has become the type of player that the Jags officials are starting to fall in love with. A lot of people are starting to believe that maybe Jacksonville could lean in the direction of the high upside of Travon Walker and some of the things that he could do, because he does have a high motor. He did test very well at the combine, and he did test very well at his pro day. And maybe the Jaguars are thinking that they're going to try to bank on his high upside. They're thinking maybe with the opportunity and the chance moving to the NFL game, his skill set would be able to translate well into the NFL, and he can end up being the type of player that they're expecting him to be coming into the Jacksonville Jaguars scenario. So if that actually happens and the Jaguars actually do end up taking Travon Walker at number one, that could cause some type of seismic ripple effect towards the rest of the draft and what these other teams at 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. might decide and end up doing. Because a lot of people are under the assumption that Aiden Hutchinson will be the guy that's going to be picked at number one. Now, in the scenario that the Jacksonville Jaguars do end up taking Travon Walker because of his high upside, that's going to depend a lot upon what is going to happen at number two with the Detroit Lions. Now, a lot of them assumed if the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to take Aiden Hutchinson at number one, then you figure that Detroit might end up taking Kayvon Thibodeaux at number two. But the fact now that Aiden Hutchinson in this scenario would be on the board at pick number two, does Detroit end up going for the hometown guy in Aiden Hutchinson, bring him back to Detroit, and have him play on that Detroit defensive line? Or do they actually still believe that Aiden Hutchinson has the higher potential? That Kayvon Thibodeaux has the higher potential amongst those defensive end prospects, and they end up taking Kayvon Thibodeaux instead of Aiden Hutchinson. It's a very strong possibility that they can do that. Now, I'm still going to go on the assumption that if Aiden Hutchinson is there at number two, the Detroit Lions will run up to the podium and they will take him because he's a hometown guy. He went to Michigan, just feels like a match made in heaven, and it would solve the opposite end of the defensive end position, pair up with the Aquara brothers, Julian and Romeo. Now, that would leave the Texans at pick number three, and the Texans can go in a couple of different directions here. The Houston Texans can always go... They can go for the offensive line position because there's been reports coming out that officials have been asking and seeing if Titus Howard, the right tackle right now currently on the Houston Texans roster, might decide to switch over and play guard instead. And there's also been some rumors and reports going out that Houston may be looking to trade their left tackle Laramie Tunsil and try to unload some of his cap to try to give him some extra cap space and maybe try to supplement that loss of Tunsil and maybe get one of these big tackles in the draft. But if that scenario happens, and for instance, Kayvon Thibodeaux and one of those offensive tackles are there, I still think, in my opinion, they're going to go for the offensive tackle because they're going to want to try to protect Davis Mills or whoever their future franchise quarterback is going to be. So I'm just going to assume out of the tackles in this position, Evan Neal is the most highly rated out of the three of them. So I'm going to assume that Evan Neal will be the pick here at number three, even though the Kayvon Thibodeaux is very, very intriguing to take him at pick number three. I think that the Houston Texans are ultimately going to take the offensive lineman, and I think they're going to go with Evan Neal at three. Now this paints a very interesting scenario for the New York Jets. The New York Jets have been linked to a lot of these pass rushers that they definitely need some pass rush help. They really don't have a dominant pass rush edge right now. Carl Lawson, who they signed last year, tore his Achilles before the beginning of the season. He's just coming back from that injury. Who knows what he's going to be? And other than him, they really don't have a premier pass rusher on the at the defensive end position. They have Quinn Williams on the inside, and so but they need that dominant edge pass rusher. They also are in big time need of some help in the secondary. Now I know they have LaMarcus Joyner. I know they signed Teron Whitehead in the secondary. Do they maybe end up going for a high potential guy like a Kyle Hamilton for that secondary position? Or you have the two top cornerbacks sitting there, like an Ahmed Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. Do the Jets maybe try to bank on one of those two guys and the potential if Stingley can end up staying healthy, and if he's not, that injured leg is not as badly injured as it originally thought, and he was able to heal up. Maybe they bank on the potential high upside of Stingley, who is, when healthy, probably the best cornerback prospect in this draft. Or do they go with the length, the size, and the lateral movements of an Ahmed Sauce Gardner and throw him out there as your number one corner? And there's always a scenario that the Jets can also try to improve that offensive line. And at the same time, try really hard to protect Zach Wilson, because they still might believe that Zach Wilson, going in his second year, is that franchise quarterback. There's been a lot of red flags about Mekhi Becton because of injury issues and weight issues, that maybe Mekhi Becton might not be the answer at left tackle. He might not even be the answer at right tackle. And George Fant has played very admirably and has been a very solid player for this team. But at the same time, George Fant might be a guy that you might rely on as possibly a swing tackle, so maybe the Jets decide, if they see an Ekwonu and a Cross in this scenario sitting there at pick number 4, maybe they decide the offensive lineman is just too good to pass up, and they decide to go for one of them. Or the scenario, which the Jets have been highly looking at this position for a while, is the wide receiver position. The Jets have been targeting wide receivers as they tried to recently make a trade for Tyreek Hill, and they actually had a deal in place, but also did the Miami Dolphins, and ultimately Tyreek Hill ended up choosing the Miami Dolphins and decided to go play down in Miami and South Beach. Now the Jets have been targeting a lot of these wide receivers right now in terms of trade targets, like a DK Metcalf from Seattle, an A.J. Brown from Tennessee, or even a Deebo Samuel from San Francisco. But there's a lot of good prospects in this wide receiver class, like a Traylon Burks, a Garrett Wilson, a Chris Olave, a Jameson Williams. A lot of good players in this draft that they could potentially target, or Drake London. So maybe the Jets decide to shock everybody. Maybe they decide to go wide receiver at number 4. The Jets are one of the first team in this scenario that has all the options open. In my scenario, I'm going to pick, I think the Jets are ultimately going to take the cornerback because they see the threat in that division with the other wide receivers. So I think they're end up going to taking Ahmed Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati as their number 4 pick. So right now on my big board of potential surprises that could happen in this draft without any trade scenarios, I have Trayvon Walker going to the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 1. I have Aiden Hutchinson going to the Detroit Lions at number 2. I have Evan Neal going to the Houston Texans at number 3. And I have the New York Jets selecting Ahmed Sauce Gardner at number 4. Now this leaves the Giants. Now the Giants have been, for a while, they know that the offensive line, especially right now, the right side of that offensive line, namely right tackle, has been a big hole for this team, and they have not filled that offensive line hole since the days of Kareem McKenzie, when he was helping that Eli Manning-led team in 2007 and 2011 win some Super Bowl championships. There you have two really good offensive tackles staring you in the face in this scenario with Ike Ekwonu and Charles Cross. Both of them are very good prospects. You can go either direction with this, but you also have that one wild card that's sitting there at number 5, and that's the defensive end out of Oregon, Kayvon Thibodeau, who some have rated as the best prospect in this draft, and maybe might be too sweet to pass up. Now in this scenario right here, Giants are in a perfect position if they do in fact stay at 5, and in this scenario I'm guessing they will. You have Kayvon Thibodeau sitting there at number 5. You have Ike Ekwonu and Charles Cross, the two best offensive tackles left on the board, sitting there at number 5. Do the Giants take a chance of taking one of those offensive tackles and hope that Kayvon Thibodeau ends up slipping past the Carolina Panthers back to the Giants at 7? Or do you take assurance that Kayvon Thibodeau You want to take him now while he's there sitting for you. And either way, you're going to get one of those offensive tackles at 7 if the Carolina Panthers end up not taking a quarterback at 6 and they end up taking one of those offensive tackles at 6. In my scenario, if he's there, I'm taking Kayvon Thibodeaux at number 5. There's no way I can pass on a high-end prospect like this who can end up being that game-changing pass rusher that this team has not had since they drafted Jason Pierre-Paul out of South Florida in 2010. So I am taking Kayvon Thibodeaux if he's sitting there, because in a way, it's a win-win scenario. You get your stud pass rusher at number 5, and you can easily still get one of those offensive tackles at 7. So I'm taking Kayvon Thibodeaux for the New York Giants at number 5. Now at number 6, I think the Carolina Panthers can go in a couple of different directions. They can go offensive line and help out whoever the quarterback is there right now. I mean, currently it's Sam Darnold, but I doubt Sam Darnold will be the starting quarterback when the NFL season starts. I think they will end up drafting their quarterback. And in this case, I'm actually going to go that they're going to draft Malik Willis. I think that the Carolina Panthers have been looking for a quarterback this whole entire time, and out of all the quarterbacks, they have been ties to Kenny Pickett as well. I think that the Carolina Panthers will end up taking the high upside of Malik Willis and hope that a guy like Matt Rule and some of the offensive coaches on that team can get the most out of a Malik Willis when you got the talents of a Christian McCaffrey, a DJ Moore, a Robbie Anderson, and a Terrace Marshall over there. So I think in the end, the Carolina Panthers will take Malik Willis at number 6. And at number 7, for the New York Giants, you have Ike Mekwonu out of North Carolina State, and you have Charles Cross out of Mississippi State. Which offensive tackle in this projection do the Giants end up taking? Now, they can always surprise, and they can go a Derek Stingley at cornerback at this pick. They can always go a Kyle Hamilton at safety. They can always go a Devin Lloyd at linebacker. That's assuming if maybe the Giants want to build the defense as strong as possible. Now, in this case scenario, I just really think that this team needs to get that right tackle and give Daniel Jones, or whoever the quarterback is going to be, in 2022 and beyond, a legit shot to show what they can do, and they're going to shore up that right tackle spot. And in this case and scenario, I'm going with Ike Mekwonu, who I think is, besides Evan Neal, the best offensive prospect in this draft. And this guy is a mean streak. He's a bull rusher. He can get it done at the offensive line. You plug him in at right tackle, and you got yourself possibly your bookend tackles with Andrew Thomas and Ike Mekwonu for the next 6 to 10 years. So at number 7, I am taking Ike Mekwonu out of North Carolina State for the New York Giants. So just to recap, in this strange and very odd scenario that it could possibly happen, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to surprise everybody and take Trayvon Walker, the defensive end out of Georgia, at number 1. The Detroit Lions end up taking Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive end out of Michigan. The Houston Texans at number 3. They take Evan Neal, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. At number 4, the New York Jets end up taking Ahmed Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati at number 4. The New York Giants with their first of 2 first-round picks in the top 10. Their first pick, they take Kayvon Thibodeaux, the defensive end out of Oregon. At number 6, the Carolina Panthers go out and take Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty. And with the second pick in the top 10 for the New York Giants in the first round, they end up taking Ike Mekwonu, the offensive tackle out of North Carolina State. And if this ends up happening, I don't really see a lot of Giants fans that are going to be very unhappy, where they get themselves a very, very good stud pass rusher who can end up being a top pass rusher if he can stay healthy and continue to develop. And you also get that right tackle that this team as badly has needed for years. So that's just my quick scenario on what possibly could happen in this NFL draft and what possibly some of the kooky things that could happen, and maybe some things that can actually end up help and benefit the Giants. That actually end up benefiting the Giants in terms of what is the best case scenario for a Giants fan, that we can end up getting Kayvon Thibodeaux and Ike Mekwonu in this draft. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday. Take it easy. Let's go Giants. NFL draft is going to be here before we know it in 17 days. We got to hope for the best and wish for the best, and we all cannot wait until we get to April 28th at 8 o'clock for NFL draft night. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Let's go New York Giants.